Hi friends, it's your pal Scott Garibay, and today I am going to do a video on tabletop role-playing game design, and this is going to be my Steal This Idea video. So I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to encourage you, some aspiring tabletop role-playing game designer to steal it. All right, so I have this idea for a combat system for a tabletop role-playing game. Well, Scott, why don't you just put this in your tabletop role-playing? Well, actually, that's a good question. So first of all, I already have a tabletop role-playing game. You can find it on itch.io, and you can find it on TTRPG. But it's failed. Like, no, I thought it was great. I think it, now that, looking back, I'm like, oh, it's overly complex, right? And so I need to do a simpler one. So I have written a simpler one. I have another tabletop role-playing game called ABC RPG, which is in progress, which is a work in progress right now, and this idea does not fit well into that. So this is a good idea. I don't want to just sit around. If you're an aspiring tabletop role-playing game designer, I would love to see this put into a TTRPG. All right, so first of all, and thank you for your patience, because I'm almost there to where I give you the idea, but I want to talk about the inspiration for this idea. So the inspiration for this idea comes from two sources. One, Dave Thomavor. So Dave Thomavor is a really interesting guy. He has the best tabletop role-playing game review channel on the entire internet, which should mean that I love Dave Thomavor, but I don't. He is one of the most deep in the weeds D&D hater that exists. He absolutely despises Dungeons & Dragons. He really stands against it, and he uses his channel to give Dungeons & Dragons a virtual swift kick in the virtual nards every chance he can, and I really dislike that. But he is brilliant, and he covers a lot of TTRPGs, and his content's free, so I watch him, right? So he was doing a review of Fragged Empire 2. Fragged Empire 2, are you kidding me? So that thing's been kicking around for a decade, right? It's an international product. It has really good art, and it has a so-so setting. And it clearly also has a highly forgettable rule set. I actually think I actually got a hold of it at Fragged Empire 1. I got to look at it at the PAX Unplugged TTRPG library. So I'll sit down and I'll take 2 hours and just kind of go through and look at tabletop role-playing games that I've never been able to buy, right? Just because I can't. If I buy every tabletop role-playing game that I want, I won't be able to eat. I'll starve to death, right? Like I literally have to manage like the food that goes into my body by protecting myself from not buying every TTRPG I want, right? So basically, so Fragged Empire 2 is coming out, and he said that the complexity on it is it's very crunchy. It's crunchier than D&D 5e, but and get this, Dave Thomavor, I thought this was brilliant. Dave Thomavor is saying that the absolute crunchiest thing that exists is Pathfinder. That's very interesting. I think that is right. I think probably Pathfinder is the most crunchiest thing there is. Right? That's interesting. All right. So he said that the way this guy dealt with combat is very involved. So involved that he said, you don't have to do every combat like this. If you want, you can resolve some conflicts with a few skill checks, right? But that's very wishy-washy. It's very hand-wavy, right? But it inspired my idea, and here we go. Okay, here's what I would love to see. And please steal this idea. All right, combat is 3 sizes: skirmish, fight, battle. Okay? And then every single person in the combat, every single character in the combat, every player and the dungeon master or the game master gets the same amount of rolls in each one of these conflict types, right? So let's say there's 5 players and 1 dungeon master. Okay, and I'm just going to use the term dungeon master because I hate game master, but you know where I'm going. All right, so 5 players, 1 dungeon master. Okay, in a skirmish, every single player gets 1 roll. Okay, and the dungeon master gets 1 roll. And so, and you make that roll, right? And then you have a calculus, right? You have a formula that determines what happens. And it might be like your total, the total of the entire team means something. Whether each player beat the dungeon master or not means something. And also the variances between those rolls mean something. So everybody produces their result, and then you determine what happens in the combat. Okay, each and it's quick because everybody makes 1 roll, and then you determine. Okay, that is a skirmish, and that would happen if there are if most of and then I do use this idea in ABC RPG. Yeah, I'm gonna keep moving. In ABC RPG, there's minions, there's agents, and there's elites, right? So minions are clear. I'm sorry, it's minion, hero, champion, right? Minion, hero, champion. So minion, right? Hero, and champion. And they're going up in tiers of power, right? So if most of the combatants, if the majority of combatants are minions, then it's a skirmish, and you don't really and that only goes for the force that the dungeon master is bringing. You never take into account the levels of the player characters. They're going to fight because it's just a freebie. You don't consider their power level. Okay. Next, we're going to do so that's a skirmish. Next is a fight. Okay, and a fight is 3 rolls each. Okay, and this could get interesting because essentially you're going to go through, and when everybody's made their 3 rolls, right, then at that point you will determine, and clearly you totally get rid of hit points in this, right? Characters are either hail, which is and some of these ideas are from my my ABC RPG. Hail, wounded, or dead, right? And then you move them through these states as this happens, right? But players can go in the order they want, and the dungeon master only has 3 rolls, right? So this is very much all very slanted toward the advantage of the players, which is on purpose. Okay, and then whatever group and it doesn't matter if he's bringing, now clearly he's going to be bringing a mixture of minions, heroes, and champions, people at that level. And also, just to be clear, it'd be minion, hench, and villain, right? Like 3, good, bad, but the power levels are the same, right? So with a conflict, every single player is going to get 3 rolls, and the dungeon master gets 3 rolls, and that's it. And you use those rolls and you sequence them so that things are happening. You're like, well, what if there's a bunch of people left at the end? Right? Well, that final roll ramps up, and you do your first roll, you do your second roll, and the dungeon master does a final roll, and player characters may come in after that and adjust that final final to level out or change and actually I guess the dungeon master's wouldn't be a final. It would be the dungeon master's final roll, and then that could establish an ending, which is then reshaped or reconfigured by the remaining player character roles, which I think is very interesting. But basically, you're forcing a set number of roles increasingly for each of these different types of conflicts, which I think is very, very interesting. Okay, and then finally, a battle would be 7 rolls each, right? So it's longer. But then the other thing that's clear is all of these are going to be the same length, right? And it doesn't matter how many non-player characters the dungeon master is bringing in, right? So, and basically what you're saying is, yes, there's a difference between a skirmish, a fight, and a battle, right? And you might have 3 skirmishes, 1 fight, and 0 battles in a session. And then in the next session, you may have 1 battle, and that's the whole session, right? But it's going to be 7 rolls and that is a lot of rolls, right? But you're like, oh my gosh, that's 5 times 7 is 35. That's 42 rolls, right? Yes, that is 42 rolls, but it's not as bad as, Meat Sack Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, get all the non-player characters' hit points all the way down to 0. It's not as bad as that, and it's very common for D&D combats to go 1.5 hours, 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours, and in the case of extremely bad dungeon masters, 4.5 or even 5.5 hours, right? So while 42 rolls seems like a lot, if you only hit 1 or 2 of those in a campaign, that's interesting. So that's my idea. I think it's a good idea, but you're welcome to steal it. I'm hoping someone would steal it. If anybody does steal it, put it in the comments below. I'd love to see it. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.